A final news story of the week, and it is news, but without much detail. Ninja Theory and Microsoft have announced that Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga, is officially coming to PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro this summer, and there are going to be PlayStation 5 Pro enhancements. And there are going to be actual enhancements to the game itself, which are carried through to all of the available consoles. So I guess that'll all sort of be backported, so to speak, to the existing versions of the game. Oliver, I'd ask you for a bit more of your thoughts about all of this, except this is kind of like a really bizarre announcement. They've announced that this is happening. They've announced that there's going to be new things. They've said that there's going to be immersive haptic feedback for the DualSense controller. But beyond that, it's kind of like, yes, we've got all of these new cool things happening, but we're not going to tell you anything about it. You'll have to wait. Which is kind of bizarre, isn't it?
I guess one thing they're promising here is that these new features, these supposed alleged new features, are coming to all platforms.
Right.
At the same time, with the existing versions getting those new features as a free patch. So exactly what those new features are that would apply to all versions of the game, you kind of think that maybe, at least on the console side, that maybe additional modes would be an interesting feature, like 40 FPS modes, like 60 FPS modes, if they're achievable, maybe an unlocked mode, things like this. But honestly, for Hellblade 2 in particular, I'm not really drawn to that necessarily. I thought it felt great at 30 FPS. I don't think it necessarily benefits from a faster refresh that much. The timing windows are pretty generous. It's not like Expedition 33 where I felt like I needed every margin of frame time to complete encounters in the game. And honestly, there's a certain, I know this is a meme, but there's a certain interplay between the frame rate and motion blur that feels a little bit more like cinematically correct at 30 FPS than 60 FPS, to me at least, with this kind of presentation for a game that's trying to emulate the look of a film to such a great degree, from like the shallow depth of field and the soft focus optics and the CA and the motion blur and the ultra wide cinematic framing, the black bars in the top and bottom of the screen. I think it's just a game that's trying to achieve a cinematic look, and maybe 30 FPS is indeed, controversially, perhaps that is a part of that look, perhaps. But one interesting option here that would be maybe a little bit more intriguing than just offering some new modes, and would apply to the PC as well, is adding support for hardware lumen. At least on PC and PS5 Pro, I could certainly see that. One of the very few critiques of Hellblade 2's graphics that you could make is that it does not really scale too far above the consoles on PC, and that should be able to improve the lighting quality somewhat if it was put in place and QA'd and all that good stuff for PS5 Pro, perhaps, and PC. And one other thing they could do is maybe integrate more of the NVIDIA UE5 tech and earn the full ray tracing moniker, perhaps.
Right.
You know, as much as I love the ray tracing heavy hitters on PC, like Cyberpunk, like Indiana Jones, like Star Wars Outlaws, I don't think any of those titles come particularly close to Hellblade in terms of character fidelity and animation, or even just like the density of the environments. Hellblade is in a level of its own, in my opinion. It's a very constrained game, but it does look incredible. In terms of raw fidelity per second, coining a new metric, I don't think there's anything else quite like it. And if you could push that out further, even with technologies that aren't like fundamentally transformative, like perhaps the VSMs look pretty good relative to like RTX Ti or something, right? Perhaps there are some elements to, I mean, Hellblade 2's solutions for lighting already look great. Improving them further would be fantastic. But even if the upgrades there were not transformative and were a little bit more on the iterative side of things, it would be cool to have them, just to have like this perfectly polished piece of like marble that is Hellblade 2's visual presentation, to have that be an even glossier sheen. That would be fantastic, I think.
Yeah, so Tom, an enhanced version of Hellblade 2 is coming. They won't tell us what the enhancements are until some intermediate point in the future, but what would you like to see? I guess that's a lot of ground that Oliver's just covered there.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'd echo some of the points there, that it really sets the game always set a benchmark, a high watermark for character modeling and performance capture, and the environmental detail as well. Delivery of a filmic look and style, that 30 FPS update. I'd rarely say this, but it does actually work for this game. Not that a 60 FPS mode would be kind of I'd say no to it. And I think that would be an easy option, an easy kind of get, I suppose, especially if they're specifically talking about the PS5 Pro, if that's feasible there, or if it's going to be rolled out to the base model and therefore Series X as well. The big question for me is how they could possibly sort of retrofit or improve the PC version. If it's the funniest sort of way they could do that is just to say, well, we've got haptic feedback now with DualSense on the PC now, and that's that. But yeah, they're coming in with that trailer and not even saying what are the actual features being added, and giving a very tentative summer release date as well. Kind of just leaves so much hanging in the air. So it's very strange, but it is nice.
It already is the summer practically.
Yeah. So now, like at some point in the next couple of months. But I will say it's nice to see this game coming to PlayStation platforms as well. PS4 got the original game. It's nice to see the developer Ninja Theory come over, to produce their games on Sony's platform again. They've got a rich history, as I said in that trailer, or announcement trailer, with Heavenly Sword on PS3. So yeah, there's a good relationship there that I think, and I think that whole Xbox versus PlayStation rivalry is diminished to the point that it's kind of just, it doesn't really factor so much at this point. But yes, it's good to see, but there's so many questions still to be answered there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think Oliver had a lot of good ideas for Hellblade on PC specifically there. As to whether that actually happened or not, who knows? But yeah, I'd certainly like to see hardware lumen or even path tracing on that. But it would preclude the other versions of actually enjoying that feature. But, it's such a showcase. It's a bit of a shame it doesn't have it in that respect. Beyond that, I just have no idea what they're planning. 60 FPS seems obvious, but also kind of superfluous. We did actually do some simulations back in the day about whether they could do it or not. And, they can just by tweaking resolution. I think there was possibly some CPU problems that they would have had. Maybe they've moved it onto a more modern version of Unreal where those CPU issues are less of a problem. But, it's all guesswork at the moment because we've got this announcement trailer which basically announces it's coming this summer, which is basically almost now. So I'm not sure why you're holding back details. There was a similar thing also with Forza Horizon 5 on PlayStation 5. It was like, okay, we're doing it at some point in the spring and there will be enhancements, but no, we're not going to tell you what they are, which was kind of weird, but...
One last thing that did come up in the comments quite a bit, not necessarily tech related, but a lot of people want a physical release for this game.
Yeah.
Digital only on Xbox, and that's a real shame. So a new opportunity to put that right.
That's a good point. Absolutely.